Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The App. The App is our political podcast, and it stands for ArkLaTex People and Politics. And we have a very special guest today. Let me introduce Colin Allred, running for the Senate in the state of Texas. Colin, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We want to have, of course, a large part of, this is online, so people see it everywhere, but we'll use cuts of this in our regular newscast, and big part of our signal goes into East Texas, so you'll get to interact with a lot of your voters there. So talk to me just about this campaign for Senate versus the last one. How does it differ? How is it similar?
Yeah. Well, listen, I just really believe in our state. I'm a fourth generation Texan. I was raised by a single mom in Dallas. I was a public school teacher, and I was able to, play football at Baylor, make it to the NFL, become a civil rights lawyer and serve in Congress because of the people of this state. And I think that there were a lot of promises made to Texans in the last election, especially to working Texans, about being on their side, about trying to lower their costs that have just not been kept. And so, I'm really excited about the opportunity in this campaign to show working people across our state, not tell them that I care about them, that I know what they're going through because I grew up the same way, that I know what we can do together to try and address some of their concerns around costs, to lower their costs in healthcare and childcare, to make sure that they're able to get ahead, to lower their housing costs. That's what I want to spend this campaign really focused on, and I'm really excited about it.
Those are all noble goals. I heard you in some of your interviews mention corruption. And could you be a little more specific when you're talking about corruption? What are you referring to?
Well, I think we have an inherently corrupt system in place. One that rewards the wealthy and well-connected. I've seen it up close in my time in Congress, but also one that really makes it hard for working people to get ahead. But then I think we have another side of it, which is that we have some corrupt officials in offices who are taking advantage of their offices for themselves to make more money or to advance the interests of special interests or the folks who are supporting them in their campaigns. I never have taken a dime in my 6 years in Congress of any kind of corporate PAC money. And the reason I didn't do that, even though I was representing Dallas and could have probably received a lot of funds from that, was I didn't want anyone to ever wonder why I was making a decision that I was making or that I had been bought and paid for. And I think we have to have a discussion about this in our state because too often the most powerful interests are able to capture elected officials, and they're not serving the folks they represent. They're serving those interests. That's something we have to change.
Along those lines, there are, I think, some people trying to bar members of Congress from trading stocks while they're in office. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's great. I'm glad you mentioned it. It's one of the things I talk about a lot at my events, which is I think it's outrageous that members of Congress are able to trade stocks. For 6 years in Congress, I never traded a single stock. I never would. I think it's unbelievable because, listen, you have insider information.
Yeah.
And if you're using that to make more money, then folks should be, feel cynical about, why you're doing what you're doing, or if you're really doing it because it's in the public interest or in your personal interest. And so I find this to be offensive that some folks do this. I have supported legislation when I was in Congress to ban it, but when I'm in the Senate, I know we can get this done. I think most people think that this is something that we should have in place.
I know you were in Congress for 6 years. You did have, I think you had a chance to serve when Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House. That's correct, right? Yeah. And of course, he's from here. And we like Mike here. I just wondered what your thoughts were in working with him as the Speaker.
Well, it was interesting because we had a 3-week period where we had no Speaker.
That's right.
And I had served on a committee with then Representative Johnson, but didn't know him very well. But I had the impression that he was a conscientious person of faith, which I'm also a person of faith, so that meant a lot to me. Yeah. And then, with his elevation, I think we've seen, some of that. What I've been frustrated by, to be quite honest with you, is I don't think that he's done enough to try and advance bipartisanship or try and find a way to bring in more parts and more views within the House. And to me, that's something that the Speaker can do. And we've seen this in the past that great speakers aren't just leaders of their party. they're leaders of the House as a whole. And I haven't seen that yet.
I just wanted to touch on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's
And of
fine.
course, look, listen, the biggest thing, you know, and I know the biggest thing going on, maybe in the country, but certainly in the state of Texas right now, is this
Yeah.
battle over redistricting. So talk to me. What do you think about all this?
Well, I mean, so I was a voting rights lawyer after played in the NFL. I went to law school and worked in voting rights. I never asked anybody who they were going to vote for. I just wanted to make sure that they could vote. My goal was to have as many people as possible be involved in our democracy. But back when I started doing that over a decade ago, it was very different back then. There was a lot more subtle things going on back then. This is just a very open and blatant attack, I think, on our democracy as a whole, but also just trying to say that, listen, we're just going to take 5 seats because we think we can. And I think everybody should be concerned by this, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that we should all be concerned about this. This is going to lead to a race to the bottom. It's going to silence the voices of millions of Texans, particularly Black and brown communities who will lose representation. And I think it's something that is just wrong. And, I served with John Lewis when I was in the Congress. And he was a mentor of mine. He was a hero of mine. And, I think Mr. Lewis would tell us that right now we don't have to do this. We don't have to go down this road. That the battles that we had, in the 60s for civil rights to try and make sure that we could put in place things like the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that when John Lewis got his skull cracked walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that meant something. And that we shouldn't be, going back and trying to go back to another time and another place. And I really feel strongly that this is going to lead to all kinds of negative consequences, not just here in Texas, but across the country.
Have our politics just gotten too contentious? I mean, it's exhausting at times.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm a football player at heart, and uh, I think I was captain of the team at Baylor, and I played in the NFL, and I think when you play football, you realize that at some point training camp is over,
Yeah.
and we're all on the same team, and we got to go out there and execute. And I see our elections as kind of like that. Well, at some point the election is over,
Yeah.
and you should be able to pull together and be on, Team America and try and help people and try and actually, get legislation passed that will advance, the common good. And I think we have too many incentives for folks to do the opposite. And I think gerrymandering is a big part of that. That's
Yeah.
why I'm so against what's happening here in Texas, because I think it elects folks who are more extreme and who then, when they get into the House of Representatives, have no interest at all in trying to get something done. But I also think that, when people are running for office, the way they do that should tell you how they'll serve. I've always tried to run in a way that brings everyone together around our shared values instead of pitting folks against each other. I would love to see more of that.
What do you think about Governor Abbott's, I guess it's a threat to
Yeah.
arrest those that left the state to avoid that vote?
I mean, I think it's unconstitutional. I think listen, this is the legitimate use of their legislative offices for folks who feel like they had no other options. Thousands of Texans testified at hearings all across our state. I testified as well in Austin against, this redistricting scheme. Most Texans, I think, if they're thinking about what a special session should be about right now, they would say that it should have been about, the flooding in the Hill Country,
Yeah.
how we can be better prepared for future disasters, how we can help those communities recover from this disaster. There are still folks who would need a lot of help, and that's where the focus should have been. So that's what I'd love to see the governor do, is actually try and respond to what people's needs are, instead of just continuing with this, being told what to do basically by the White House with this crazy partisan attack, and making it so that many Texans are fearful that they're going to lose their representation.
What do you think is tougher, politics or football?
I mean, physically football,
Yeah.
but the thing about football is it's fair,
Yeah.
and we have accountability in football. You can't really lie in football. We always say, the tape doesn't lie, because we're all going to watch the same film. And so you can't say, oh, I did all this in the game. It's like, well, we'll see tomorrow if you did that in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in politics we could use a little more accountability. And I would honestly, that's why I appreciate folks like you and our folks in media, because this is what we have to do. We have to try and make sure that folks know who's running, why they're running, what they want to do. And then, in elections, let the chips fall where they may, but then hold them accountable in office for what they said they would do. I just think we could use a lot more accountability in politics the way we had in football.
I like that thought. Look, they told me I had 10 minutes with you. I'm at 10. I'm going to ask you one last
Okay.
question.
Sure,
I know your
sure.
time is really valuable. If you are to win this election, tell me what's your agenda? What's at the top
Yeah.
of the list?
I want to be laser focused on lowering costs. I just, I know the anxiety. When my mom and I were growing up, when we'd go to the grocery store and we'd swipe her Texas Teachers Credit Union debit card, not credit card, but debit card,
Yeah.
we could just say a little prayer, quite honestly, just hoping that we could afford everything that week. And I know what that anxiety is for a lot of people right now. And I can just feel it. That costs are going up, they're working harder for less, they're spending less time with their kids. We need somebody who's going to go in there and say, listen, every area that we can, I want to lower your costs. I want to lower your costs where I know we can, whether it's, as I said, healthcare is a big area where we can lower your costs. Your childcare is a big area where we can lower your costs. The cost of housing is going through the roof. We have to address that. And then you can go on from there and keep that focus up and make sure people know that we can restore, I think, a belief maybe in our system that it can actually work for you. And so there's some reforms that I want to see put in place, from ending partisan gerrymandering and the gerrymandering that we're seeing around the country, to reforming the filibuster, to banning stock trading, as you said. There's some fundamental reforms that we can do that can also, I think, restore some faith in Congress and just in our democracy as a whole.
Colin, I like the way you think, my friend, and I thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, Colin Allred, candidate for Senate, the United States Senate from the great state of Texas. We appreciate him being with us. Back with more of the app right after this. All right, we are back with more of the app, ArkLaTex People and Politics. And for the second half of this broadcast, we welcome back State Representative Stephen Jackson of Shreveport. And Stephen, thanks for being here, my friend. I certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me back on.
You got it. I want to talk about the session that was recently completed. You and I obviously have talked many times before, during, and not so much after. That's why I want to do a little catch up here. And of course, going into that session, the big deal was automobile insurance. That seemed to capture most of the attention. In your opinion, was there enough done during the session in that category to make a difference?
Well, I think, we tried our best effort on it. I tend to tell people that, auto insurance is one of those things that continue to be a drain on citizens. And so we considered a number of bills, very heavy push from both sides, from the insurance industry as well as the trial lawyer industry. And so, we've seen year after year after year where people come in and promise to lower auto insurance or home insurance. I didn't campaign on that because I don't think that there's going to be a single bill, that one single instrument that's going to lower it. And so it's something that people wake up every day and deal with because they're paying that premium on a monthly or quarterly basis. And so I don't necessarily know that we have enough time right now to be able to determine, were those bills effective. I think it's going to take a lot of time to be able to determine if those bills were effective.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what people out in the state want to hear. You know that, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I continue to tell people. I think it's one of those things where, we've tried a lot of different ideas. I do know that if like truckers, if they put dash cams in their car, meaning the trucks, offering rebates for that. I know there's something that says if you are driving without insurance, you can't seek payout, those kind of things. And so, but I still think it's something that's going to take some time. It's not anything that's just going to happen overnight. We'll just have to continue to see. But right now, I like to just tell people, honestly, there's no single instrument that I know of that's just going to reduce your car insurance overnight or next month.
Yeah. So best guess is maybe 2-3 years down the road before we can actually get a gauge on how these things might work, right?
Maybe so. I do know where I saw where there was an insurance company that was announced that's moving into the state. And so, that may be a good sign. And maybe that's a sign of things to come. I do know that we need to do more to attract companies to our state. And I've been looking, everywhere to see if this is just an anomaly to Louisiana. And it seems to be something that's going on in the state of Louisiana that's unique to Louisiana, because Texas, now, I kid you not, Texas has a higher population. So their reinsurance pool of people who are there, that's paying into the system is much larger. And so there has to be some type of balance. I can say that, we've had at least 3 to 4 years of quiet storm activity or hurricane seasons.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. And so maybe we can see some on the homeowner side start to settle or something like that. Because I know there was a while that we had these constant back-to-back hurricanes and floods, and that kind of really made the insurance industry pretty vulnerable. So.
Okay. Let's move on off the insurance topic. There was obviously other things going on. You had some good bills for this area, and one of those dealt with these large apartment complexes that were taking people's money and supposedly paying their water bills and then not paying the bill and leaving the folks high and dry. You had some pretty good legislation there. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was House Bill 6. It created the crime of misappropriation of utilities, and as you stated, this was an issue that was directly affecting Shreveport residents. Well, it's August 1st, and so that bill is now in effect. My hope is that the city of Shreveport will do their part with regard to enforcement. Look. It's no secret that they'll go out and make an arrest, because just a few weeks ago, they went and arrested a woman for having roaches, too many roaches, they claim.
Yeah. Well,
somebody should do their part and arrest these people who stole tenants' money. And I'm going to continue to beat the drum about that. There has to be an investigation that has to take place. Somebody has to be held accountable for those things. And so let's hold those people to task. We put a law on the book. Senator Jenkins had a civil bill that deals with the civil side of it. So I would be very disappointed if we put these laws on the books and we continue to see the same old thing.
Well, that would be disappointing. But so how would maybe you're not even, I don't know. How would how does this go? What's the progression? Is that up to the city now to enforce that law? It is. Okay.
Absolutely. It is the city's responsibility to enforce it. The Shreveport Police, they are the primary, or the sheriff. It's up to the law enforcement agencies. They are the primary investigating bodies in this area. And so if you have an area where somebody's made a complaint, and you don't really have to have a complaint. We know that these things happen. You don't have to have somebody come make a complaint. That somebody's being taken advantage of. Somebody's money being stole. And so you have to go enforce it. I don't know if you saw last week where New Orleans, they indicted a property owner that owned multiple multifamily properties, and they charged them with racketeering.
Oh, wow. No,
it wasn't under this law.
Okay.
But it was under the blight law.
I did not see that.
It was
that's a good thing,
I'll
right?
see you. Huh?
That's a good thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because what ends up happening with all of these properties, Jeff? What ends up happening? They end up abandoning them.
Yeah.
They end up, leaving them in disrepair. I can't tell you how many times I watched your newscast and other newscasts where you're opening with Linwood Home Apartments on fire again,
Yeah.
Jolie on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's draining the city's resources. Somebody has to be held accountable. And so there are several laws that are on the books. My bill added to one of those tools that the cities and parishes can hold folks accountable for.
So on the last day, maybe last 2 days of the session, it just kind of sprang up out of nowhere, and that was this deal with pharmacies and pharmacy
Yeah.
benefit managers, and it dominated the legislature for 2 days. Talk to me about
Yeah.
that and how that was settled, or if it is
You
settled.
know, Yeah, I don't know that it's settled. I do know that we end up passing Representative Echols' bill that deal with transparency as sort of a compromise. And the Senate basically decided to go ahead and just do a study on it. It caught my attention because in my district, one of my largest neighborhoods sits, when you turn out of that neighborhood, sits a CVS pharmacy. Another area in my district, sort of on the Stony Hill side, in the Highland side, there's a CVS pharmacy that sits right there on Uri and what is that, Kings Highway.
Yeah.
So I have two CVS pharmacies, and so it really angered me when CVS got folks stirred up, saying that if we pass this bill, that PBM reform bill, they would completely take them out of business, and this bill would be the reason why. CVS announced at the beginning of 2022 that they would start strategically closing their retail operations. They announced again in 2025 that they would do more storefront closings. And so, this has been something that CVS has been planning for quite a while
Yeah.
to close stores. It did dominate the session in the last couple of days. And it was primarily because one of the concerns was, well, the bill didn't go through the normal committee process. It kind of came up in conference.
Yeah.
I just, my initial thought, to not take a side on this right now, but my initial thought is the PBM, which is the pharmacy benefit manager, their responsibility is to go get a discount. What they're doing is pocketing the discount and not passing the savings on
Yeah.
to the customer. And so everybody's feeling pinched. And my job as a legislator is to always try to figure out how can I make life better, not worse,
Right.
for citizens. And so I think we're going to revisit that conversation, not in a special session, but at some
Yeah.
point in the future. I think that. But I was disappointed the way CBS handled that. I think they could have handled that much different.
Well, they also attracted the ire of the Attorney General with the way they sent out all these emails, and I guess they used people's private information that they used to fill prescriptions to do that. That was a no-no, right?
Right. I got one of those text messages, and I just thought it was weird because I got the text message and I was like, what? And then, you kind of just look away because I thought it was spam initially, but then I started getting just bombarded. I think I probably got 300 emails in about a 2-hour span.
Wow.
And it just started just filling up my box with folks who were just angry. And I agree with the Attorney General. I agree with the governor. If they use folks' information, because I know I never signed up for a text message about legislation. I signed up to come pick up a prescription and let me know when my prescription was ready. And so if you're doing those kind of things, to one, I saw the text message and the text message was misleading.
Yeah.
I follow these kind of things. And again, some of that area that I'm talking about that has the CVS, those folks depend on that pharmacy.
Yeah.
And so, they'll turn out one day and it's closed and think that, oh, well, Rep. Jackson took some action or the legislature took some action that closed it, which just is not true.
Right.
I think CBS should be honest about what's going on. They should inform people.
Yeah.
Their model for pharmacy has been to get you to start getting your pharmaceuticals via the mail now. That's their model, and that's the way that they're going. So they should be honest with people about that.
Yeah. So
And they should pass the savings that they get from the manufacturer. They should pass that on to the customer.
yeah. And so I guess the idea, the debate was in the House there, at least, that you can be a pharmacy or you can be a PBM, but you can't be
Right.
both.
Can't be both. You shouldn't be both. And if you are going to be both, though, I think that's the position. If you're going to be both, and that's why you saw Rep. Echols' bill pass. If you're going to be both, we need to encourage you, one, to be transparent about the price. And so there is some transparency that we're going to start requiring, because people need to know that this is why your pharmaceutical, I mean, people don't realize the benefit that they're getting from CVS. They can go up the street somewhere else and get it for cheaper. But the PBM, CVS, which is a PBM, is directing them to their pharmacy.
Right. And I guess the other side of that coin, there's about 3 or 4 sides to this coin, but they were putting independent pharmacies putting them out of business, right?
Yeah, they're putting out local independent Main Street pharmacies out of business. And so, the pharmacists, they don't have the bandwidth and the wherewithal and the marketing tactics. They don't have the ability to capture everybody's phone numbers, right?
Yeah.
And so, these big corporate entities, they're at a competitive advantage when it comes to our independent pharmacies. And so I'm about leveling the playing field, but I'm also about making sure we have transparency and honesty when we have debates. And so I'm supporting the Attorney General's investigation into it. Mm-hmm. I do believe that there's been a lawsuit that's been filed as well. I'm told the governor's wife got the text message.
Yeah.
That's what really threw things off, was his wife may have gotten a text message. And I know a lot of House members were really, really upset the way those text that end up changing the whole tone of the conversation.
Yeah,
was the way CVS handled their business.
Yeah. It sure
It had
did.
nothing to do with policy at some point. It was the fact that CVS stooped so low to do what they did.
Yeah. Look, we got like a couple more minutes. We want to before we wrap up here.
Sure.
Other than HB6, which I thought was a great bill for this area, talk to me about other legislation you had in this past session.
I had some legislation that dealt with the ethics board having to live stream their meetings. I think that these are going to be the people who are responsible for levying fines and fees across the width and breadth of this state. I mean, when I found out that the ethics board, you could be a volunteer on a school board, free volunteer on the school board, and end up with a $10,000 fine, and you have people who are just quitting. Wow. They're walking away from it.
Yeah.
I just think that that's egregious, and I don't think people know how the ethics board operates. I don't think that they realize the immense power that they hold, and I just don't think that they should be able to operate in the dark. So I was very proud that we passed that bill unanimously. Well, I guess near unanimous. I think there may have been 1 or 2 no votes on some of them, but it was a good government bill and a transparency bill. People needed to know what their governmental watchdog is doing. The other bill that I was proud of was a solicitation of prostitution bill. We tightened up some of the criminal penalties for that. We're going to make sure that also the individuals who are trafficking children, they face stiffer penalties. And so was very proud to see that no one should be caught up in the human trafficking ring. No. And we've often focused very heavily on the prostitute, but we haven't really gone to the source, the person that is, we've often looked at the supply and not necessarily the demand.
Right. And
so those folks who are fueling this demand for prostitution need to be equally held accountable. And again, that's something that the policing departments will have to start doing education around. You can't just let the person who's doing the buying go and come down hard on the prostitute.
Sure.
A lot of times they're forced to be there.
Yeah. I did not realize that about the ethics board. You mentioned that you could be a volunteer on that and come away with a $10,000 fine? Good heavens.
There's a young lady in Shreveport who was volunteering for a local charter school board, and they slapped her with a $10,000 fine because she was a couple of days late getting her form in. And then I don't think she responded. I think something happened with the address, or she didn't respond. But either way, she was what we found was she was really trying to deal with her mother, who had dementia, and she was getting her settled into a facility over in somewhere in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Ethics board didn't want to hear it. We're
Wow.
still going to uphold this fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, how could you not have compassion for somebody, one, whose mother's dealing with dementia,
Right.
two, who's volunteering? These are people who step up
Yeah.
when nobody else will.
That's kind of
And so,
outrageous.
yeah, it's very outrageous.
Yeah.
School bus drivers. We've seen in our rural areas where people who have contracts to drive school buses, and it's hard to find folks to do the school bus drivers. These folks have been told either give up your contract or face this huge fine because of the way the procurement process, nothing to do with the people who got the contract. It was the way the school board handled it.
Yeah.
And the ethics board is slamming them with fines.
Wow. Listen, man,
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing us up to date on all this stuff. That's good stuff. Some of that I did not know, but that's good to know. So that's Representative Stephen Jackson from District 2 in Shreveport. And Stephen, thanks for being with us, my friend. We appreciate it.
Thanks for always having me on. I always enjoy your podcast. Appreciate it, Jeff.
All right, thank you, sir. Stephen Jackson, along with Colin Allred. It's been an excellent episode of the app. Appreciate you being with us. As always, you can catch the app wherever you get your podcast and, of course, on all KTBS digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, everybody.